Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So we are winding up finally on Playtest 7 with the Wizard, which, as longtime viewers know, is my favorite class. There's no point wasting time, let's jump in. So looking at the class chart compared to the Playtest 5 Wizard, we can see that the prepared spells have been boosted after level 13. They cap off at 25 instead of at 22. And this is more in line with the 2014 Player's Handbook, where we could expect a wizard to also finish up with 25 or thereabouts. And then at level 1, we're getting Arcane Recovery. Now in Playtest 5, this had been pushed back to level 2, so now we see it restored to first level, as we see it in the 2014 Player's Handbook. And it's the same feature, half your level rounded up, spell slots regained on a short rest once per long rest. And with spell casting, we're back to the wizard spell list, which actually is pretty close to the arcane spell list that the Playtest 5 wizard used, but now that list is class exclusive. In Playtest 5, the wizard spellbook was created with a spell ritual. Now it's back under basic spellcasting rules, and they've added a bit here where your spellbook can only be read by your wizard or someone who casts the Identify spell. They've also added that your spellbook can be used as an arcane focus, and that's nice. I mean, not a big deal, but a nice detail. They've also incorporated the optional class feature from Tasha's where you can switch out a cantrip after a long rest. And fans of this channel already know how I feel about the optional class features. I like them. Moving on to level 2, we have Scholar. This replaces the Academic from the last playtest version, which gave the wizard the ability to take the study action with advantage. Now you choose either Arcana, History, Nature, or Religion, and you must have proficiency in the skill already, in which case it now becomes Expertise. And my question here would be, what if you, say, took Insight in Medicine with your class skills, and you didn't get any of these skills elsewhere either? Does that mean you get nothing? Because that shouldn't be. You should get one of these proficiencies without expertise instead, I would think. As a general principle, I've always felt that if you gain a class feature, it should always provide you with something. There should never be a case where, sorry, you made your build wrong, so you get nothing. Sorry about that. I suddenly felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of multi-class characters who got extra tact from multiple classes suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Something terrible must have happened. At level 3, we're going to pick up our wizard subclass. Of course, that's one level later than the 2014 Player's Handbook. One thing that shouldn't be delayed, though, is subscribing if you aren't already. Or if you've been considering supporting this channel, clicking the link in the video description to check out the options on my Patreon page. As an absolute minimum, you'll get to see videos like this one right after I finish them. Sometimes a few days early, sometimes even longer. Patrons have seen several videos that aren't being released until this playtest coverage is complete. And I don't turn on the YouTube ads until they go public. At level 5, we're going to get Memorize Spell. This was a class-exclusive ritual spell in Playtest 5. Now it is a built-in feature where you take 1 minute and you can prepare a spell in your spellbook. So let's read this word for word. Studying your spellbook for 1 minute, you can expend mental and magical effort to memorize a spell. Choose one spell of level 1 or higher from your spellbook that you don't have prepared. You now have that spell prepared until you use this feature to prepare a different spell. So basically, this is one extra prepared spell that you can switch out as often as you like, as long as you take that 1 minute. That's pretty good. Where this will really come in handy is with circumstantial spells in your spellbook that aren't rituals. So, for example, Knock can be a handy spell, but it can be tough to fit on a prepared spell list because often you're not going to need it. But being able to switch it into your prepared spells by taking 1 minute could come in really handy. Of course, your spellbook won't have every possible spell, but it certainly makes it so you might want to invest to have more of those circumstantial spells available. That said, the optimal move here is you finish your long rest, use this immediately after your long rest to gain the additional preparation of just any spell you might cast, because you can switch it out later anyways, so there's no point waiting, just get that extra preparation right off the bat. Now at level 7 we get no feature, or at least no additional feature beyond spell scaling. I just want to mention that the Playtest 5 wizard got a class exclusive spell called Modify Spell at this level, which was definitely not okay as written. Well, it seems they've just abandoned that idea entirely. And then at level 9, we had the other class exclusive spell in Playtest 5, where they've clearly just abandoned it entirely as well, and that's Create Spell. This was a spell that allowed you to improve spells with Modify Spell and then write them in your spellbook for future preparation with no spell level increase, which was extremely powerful, and use character wealth as a way to prevent abuse, which I don't think is a good idea. I mean, it works at some tables, but not all of them. Anyways, it's gone. That takes us all the way to level 18 in Spell Mastery. This is where we got signature spells in Playtest 5, which is now back to level 20. So you pick 2 spells, one first level and one second level, with the casting time of an action. You always have them prepared and can cast them at their lowest level at will. You can switch out one of your selections after a long rest. In the Player's Handbook, you could switch one or both after 8 hours in study, and there was no one action casting time restriction. However, they weren't automatically prepared. I'll have to think what my go-to spells are now for this, as previously I always took Shield and Misty Step. Neither are legal selections anymore. Getting 2 additional preparations is nice, but what you have to wonder is what one action first and second level spells do you want to cast repeatedly at their base levels when you're 18th level? Detect Magic, maybe? Disguise Self? Invisibility? Am I just going to list off Warlock invocations? Well, how about Longstrider? Okay, there's one. Maybe Arcane Lock? Doesn't come up all the time, but at least I don't need to upcast it. Darkness, maybe, for the right character. Dark Vision, Detect Thoughts, Enlarge Reduce, Locate Object, Mirror Image, Rope Trick. Okay, I'm coming up with some ideas, but let's just be clear that removing the ability to select bonus action and reaction spells is a bigger nerf than the 2 extra preparations is a buff. But I do think we'll be able to find some spells that apply that we will want to cast. Then the capstone is signature spells. This was an epic boon in Playtest 5. So you're going to pick 2 3rd level spells. They're automatically prepared, and you can cast them once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot, but you can't do so again until you complete a short or long rest. And this is exactly the same as the Player's Handbook capstone. And that's everything on the Playtest 7 base wizard, and I will give some thoughts on it, but first I'm going to cover the subclasses, and I'm going to give my combined opinions and analysis at the end. So first off, we have a bit of naming change. So in the Player's Handbook, all the wizard subclasses were School of, and then the spell school they specialized in. Now it's just Abjurer, Diviner, Evoker, and Illusionist. So we will start with the Abjurer. At level 3, you get Abjuration Savant. And okay, so every 2014 Player's Handbook wizard subclass has the Spell School Savant feature, and they are notoriously poorly designed. They reduce the cost and time to copy spells of your specialized school into your spellbook. The reason this is poor design is it actually worked as an incentive to not pick the spells from your specialized school as part of your 2 free spells at level up, because those spells were cheaper to copy. Now, I don't know how often players actually avoided spells from their specialized spell school for that reason. These features were just ignored most of the time. So we have a redesign. And it's the same redesign for all 4 of these subclasses. So now you're going to get 2 spells from your specialized school of levels you can cast added to your spellbook for free. And 1 more every time you gain a new slot level from your wizard. So you can choose a lower level abjuration spell if you like, but one way or the other, in the end, it'll be 9 spells total. So this really does fix the problem entirely. Now, this isn't a powerful feature. These aren't extra preparations or anything, but with the Memorize Spell feature, those extra spells in your spellbook can be made available when you need them. And as long as you were going to pick an abjuration spell anyways, like let's say you reach level 5 and you were going to choose Dispel Magic anyways as one of your 2 free spells. Well, now you take it as your free spell from Abjuration Savant, and both those 2 free spells from the base class are now available, so it's 3 spells at level up instead of 2. Now that's not every level, it's just every other level when you gain an extra spell slot. Our other 3rd level feature is Arcane Ward. So this is a very popular subclass feature in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Your ward is activated when you cast a leveled abjuration spell, and the ward blocks damage you might take equal to twice your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier. You could recharge the shield by casting abjuration spells of 1st level or higher, and you recharge 2 points per level of the abjuration spell you cast. So this is a feature that had a trick or a loophole, I guess, in that it required you to cast a leveled spell, but there are ways you can cast leveled spells without expending resources. Now, in 2014, this wasn't so easy. You could multiclass 2 levels of Warlock for Armor of Shadows, but 2 levels is a huge investment, and Warlock isn't an easy multiclass for Wizard either, so Abjurers tended not to bother. You could cast Alarm as a ritual, but that's going to be a lot of ritual casting to recharge your shield 2 points, and at 11 minutes per casting, it's of limited practicality. But then they released the Elemental Evil Player's Companion, which gave Deep Gnomes a way to cast Non-Detection, which is an abjuration spell, at will. 1 action per casting, they just had to take a feat. Then came Eldritch Adept with Tasha's for Armor of Shadows, so you could use either of these tricks to recharge the shield as much as you liked with minimal action cost, and the power of this feature soared. So they've reworded the feature here, and the loophole has been closed. It now specifies the abjuration spell has to use a spell slot, and it's the spell slot level expended that determines how much the ward recharges. And basically that means we're back to where this feature was in 2014, and that's actually a bit jarring because it seems so much worse. I mean, it is much worse than this feature utilizing the loophole. But if memory serves, and I think you could probably Google some internet archives of discussions that are in that 2014-2015 range, you'll find we actually thought this feature was pretty good even before the loophole. And I have to remind myself of that because it's definitely not as good as it's been since the loophole presented itself. It's definitely not going to feel the same for players who've been playing Abjurers over the past few years because the loophole has become fairly common knowledge. Now, we're going to see a few loopholes get closed as we go through the subclasses, and I mean, they're all objectively nerfs. Though in all cases, I think the features were decent features before the loophole anyways. So my feelings are a bit mixed because part of me thinks they should bump up the features to compensate, but on the other hand, maybe Wizards don't need buffs, and removing these loopholes is certainly more friendly to new players. Someday we'll be saying, "Back in my days, Sonny, we used to be able to recharge our arcane wards for free with Armor of Shadows. Wow, good story, Grandpa." Level 6 we get Projected Ward, so this allows you to use your reaction to absorb the damage taken of somebody else you can see within 30 feet with your arcane ward. This is the same as the 2014 Player's Handbook, and I have to say I'm a bit surprised. I would have thought that with the Light Cleric's warding flare, this all would have just been absorbed into the 3rd level feature, but they've kept it the same. At level 10 we get Spellbreaker. This used to be Improved Abjuration, and you added your proficiency bonus to an ability check made for Counterspell or Dispel Magic. With the redesign of Counterspell, there's no ability check anymore, so this one had to be redesigned. So instead, they've made Dispel Magic a free preparation, and the way I read this, we don't even necessarily need Dispel Magic to be in our spellbook, though as an Abjurer, we likely have it, and you can cast it as a bonus action with the proficiency bonus addition to the ability check. And I like this redesign. Just remember the rules for casting spells with your bonus action. Any other spell you cast on your turn can only be a cantrip. And at level 14 we get Spell Resistance, and there is no change here. You have advantage on saving throws versus spells, and resistance to the damage of spells. And mechanically, that's exactly the same as the 2014 Player's Handbook. So we move on to the Diviner. So with Divination Savant, we have the same changes as Abjuration Savant, though I will mention you have a smaller list of spells to select from with Divination. In fact, there aren't any 7th or 8th level Divination spells, so you would need to select a lower level spell at 13th and 15th level. And Portent, so you roll 2 d20s, you record the results, and whenever someone you can see rolls any test, you can assign one of your d20s you already know the results of instead of them rolling. After a long rest, you roll 2 more d20s and you start over. This is unchanged from the 2014 Player's Handbook. I kind of had a gut feeling they would add a reaction to use this, which is usually required when you have the ability to interrupt somebody else's turn, but they didn't. Anyways, it's easily one of the most popular Wizard subclass features in the game. Then at level 6 we have Expert Divination, and there's no change from the Player's Handbook. I can't say I'm thrilled to see this the same. Having played a lot of Diviners, all I can say here is there are fewer divination spells than other schools of magic, and when you get into 2nd level and higher divination spells, their use is largely circumstantial, and some of the ones that are more regularly used, like Rary's Telepathic Bond or Rituals, so we're not expanding spell slots. So this feature it ends up not getting used a whole lot. And then level 10, we get the Third Eye. This used to use an action, now it uses a bonus action. It's probably not a big deal, because you're probably doing this outside of combat. It's no longer lost if you're incapacitated. That's good, I guess. And if you choose Dark Vision, the range is now 120, used to be 60. And Ethereal Sight has been rolled into See Invisibility, so we're kind of getting both. See Invisibility used to allow you to see the invisible with a 10-foot range. Now you cast See Invisibility without expending a spell slot. This allows you to see invisible creatures or objects with your normal vision range, and also allows seeing into the ethereal plane. This is definitely a good change. And then level 14, we have Greater Portent, and no change there. And that brings us to the Evoker. So, at level 3, we get Evocation Savant, which is the same as Abjuration Savant, 2 additional evocation spells to your spellbook, eventually 9. The Playtest 5 version gave you 2 evocation spells, and then halved the cost and time to copy evocation spells. This is better. Then we get Potent Cantrip. This was a 6th level feature in the Player's Handbook and Playtest 5. The 2014 Player's Handbook gave you half damage if a creature saved versus a damaging cantrip you cast at them. And the Playtest 5 and this version give half damage if a creature saved versus the damaging cantrip, or you miss with an attack roll on a damaging cantrip. All 3 versions do not require that cantrip be evocation or be a wizard spell. So this could apply to Eldritch Blast plus Agonizing Blast. So there's potentially a good multi-class option here. I don't think this would apply to True Strike, Booming Blade, or Green Flame Blade, as those involve an attack roll, but the cantrips aren't cast at a creature, they're cast on yourself. On to 6th level, where we get Sculpt Spells. Now, this was the opening feature previously for the Evoker, and so you got it at 2nd level with the 2014 Player's Handbook, and 3rd level with the Playtest 5 version, but now we're waiting until 6th level, otherwise mechanically it's the same feature. One thing this will do is it will discourage what we often saw, which was a 2-level dip, sometimes taken with sorcerers to get Sculpt Spells, though with the careful spell metamagic rework, probably wasn't going to happen anyways. The sorcerer no longer needs Sculpt Spells. As always, you cannot protect yourself with this feature. Okay, so let's take a minute to talk about the switching of Sculpt Spells and Potent Cantrip. At first, admittedly, I was a bit disappointed because Sculpt Spells is a really good feature and Potent Cantrip is so-so. So at first reading, this felt like a nerf. But with more time to think about it, I think I like the change and I don't actually think it's a nerf. Potent Cantrip will be more impactful at lower levels when you're relying more on cantrips. And until level 5 anyways, Sculpt Spell isn't so great. It's when those big area spells come into play where it really becomes a good feature. So, design-wise, I think this is a good move because ideally features that are higher level should be better than lower level ones. But I also think that Evokers will benefit more from Potent Cantrip at those earlier levels. At level 10, Empowered Evocation has no change from the Player's Handbook or Playtest 5, though Playtest 5 referred to the Arcane spell list rather than the Wizard spell list, but basically the same lists. At 14th level, we get Overchannel. Now, it only deals the maximum damage with the spell on the turn you cast it. The 2014 Player's Handbook and Playtest 5 version just said maximum damage with the spell, which meant that spells like Sickening Radiance did maximum damage round after round. This change was not listed in the design notes, but there it is. Otherwise, it's the same feature. So this is a bit like Arcane Ward, where I don't know whether to call it a loophole or a trick or what, but there was a non-obvious way to get more out of this feature by having a spell to get this Overchannel bonus round after round, and that loophole has been closed. So now I'd say there's no one obvious spell that outperforms here. I guess more dice, like Fireball, Upcast Erupting Earth to take advantage of those D12s, Steel Wind Strike. These spells will all be decent candidates, and this is still a decent feature. And that brings us on to the Illusionist. At level 3, Illusion Savant, same as the other Savant features, good change, and improve Minor Illusion. So there's no change here, and I gotta say that's disappointing. This level 3 feature is probably the weakest of the bunch that are printed here at least, So there was an opportunity to give this feature some kind of pizzazz, like allowing multiple images, or let the image move, or be bigger, or something. Then at level 6, you get malleable illusions. This used to require an action. Now you can change the nature of the illusion with a bonus action. I've generally found this feature to be of minor benefit, and switching it to a bonus action probably helps. But what often happens is, your illusion gets discovered, and then they recognize it as an illusion, and presumably when you change it, they still recognize it as an illusion because it's the same spell. But once in a while, this does come up. Then at level 10, we get Illusory Self. So this used to be restored on a short or long rest only, but now it can also be restored by expending a spell slot of 2nd level or higher with no action required. But here's the problem with Illusory Self. You have to use it before the attack roll is made. So you don't even know if the attack is going to hit or not, and unlike the shield spell, it only affects one attack. So then, why wouldn't I use the shield spell after I've been hit, rather than using this before they even make the attack roll? I mean, I guess there's a 1 chance in 20 we might get a critical hit against us, and this would negate that, but there's a 95% chance that's not the case. And then at 14th level, Illusory Reality. So the Illusionist lower level features aren't all that potent. But the hope is always to get to 14th level because this feature has always been bonkers. You cast a leveled illusion spell, then you use your bonus action and the illusion becomes real. So you cast Silent Image of an adamantine safe around the enemy, then a bonus action and they're stuck in a real adamantine safe for 1 minute. No saving throw. Then with Tasha's, you could take Eldritch Adept for Misty Visions and cast Silent Image without a spell slot. And since this is a specific rule overriding the general rule of Silent Image duration, this is 1 minute with no concentration, so do it again on your next turn. I've literally seen Illusionist players use this combination every round in combats, and, it's broken powerful. So, a couple changes here. Now it specifies the object created can't impose a condition. It's not really an issue. Locked in a safe is not a condition. The other change is more impactful. You now need to expend a spell slot, so the Misty Visions loophole no longer works. And I can't complain. This is still a very powerful feature, so that's probably a good change. And that's the Illusionist. So now the hard part. Let's talk about the Playtest 7 Wizard and its subclasses overall. So I actually found this video hard to do. Hard to motivate myself to do because there's just so little here that's different from 2014. There's a few changes here and there, and overall, I can get behind the changes they made, but it's minor stuff. A loophole closed here, a slight buff or nerf there, but for the most part, playing this wizard is pretty much going to feel the same as it always has. Like the Warlock got hard reverted back to the 2014 version, but if you play an Archfey Patron Bladelock in 5th edition, and then play an Archfey Patron Bladelock in this playtest, you are in for a dramatically different experience. The Great Old One Patron as well is like a whole new subclass, and is something I'm actually excited to try out. The Sorcerer, Barbarian, and Fighter all have huge changes from their 2014 versions. And then I look at the Wizard, and it seems basically the same with a few tweaks. And I tell myself, the Wizard is your favorite class in 5th edition. You should be glad if it's not being heavily redesigned. I tell myself that, but the truth is, I'm just not glad. I've played a lot of Wizards in the past 9 years, more than any other class, and I've loved it. I've played Evokers, Illusionists, Abjurers, Diviners, all many times. It's like a favorite video game that I play over and over, utilizing every option until basically I've tried them all lots. And then they release a new patch, and I think, maybe I'll try it again, but it's never going to be as much fun as it used to be. And the thing is, there's this online opinion that gets parroted a lot that I kind of hate, and I see it all the time, that the 2024 Player's Handbook is going to be just like the 2014 Player's Handbook plus errata, and that doesn't warrant a new book or paying for it again, when they could just release the errata and update reprints and be done with it. And this is just a money grab from Wizards of the Coast. And I've rallied against this take because there's still a ton of new stuff and big changes in these playtests. Way more than errata or even an expansion like Tasha's. There's tons of stuff I am just dying to try out, especially once it's officially published. Like the playtest Barbarian is a way different experience than the old Barbarian. It almost feels like a brand new class. I see the redesign of Wild Magic and Archfey and Great Old One and Eldritch Knight in this playtest alone, and I'm dying to try all of them. And there's still stuff from playtest 6 I've been dying to try that I haven't had a chance to yet because there was so much. And I can't wait to play the new Trickery Cleric in an extended campaign. This is stuff I am excited about. And when this stuff gets officially published, it will be an easy buying decision for me. So I disagree strongly with that opinion. But the Wizard, well, with that I kind of agree. This is almost the same with some tweaks. Only modify spell seems really all that different, and even that's a pretty minor feature. I mean, I honestly question if this Wizard needs playtesting at all. It seems like we've been playtesting this version of the Wizard for the past 9 years. And I don't want to be misunderstood here. I'm not saying the Wizard needed buffs. I'm saying it needed more new stuff. Like, we have the same subclasses with more or less the same features, the same spell list. The spell preparations are going to be pretty close to the same. Maybe the Wizard should have gotten a new subclass, something that will give a new experience to playing one. Because if the argument is that this Wizard feels like the 2014 Player's Handbook plus errata, I don't disagree. Now, that does not mean I won't play Wizards anymore or don't like the 2014 Wizard. It's just underwhelming to think I'm going to be getting pretty much the same experience that I've gotten since 2014 and now for who knows how much longer. I think I can really only say 2 positive things here. The first is, at least they didn't ruin the Wizard. And the second thing is, it's really a one-off as a class that looks like they've given up on any significant redesign. And with that, I'm going to leave the Wizard behind, and I think I'm finally done looking at Playtest 7. I think I've pretty much covered everything in this packet now. I'll go back to Playtest 8 to cover the Bastion system, and that should pretty much do it until Playtest 9, which I'm guessing we're not going to see for a while now. So, thanks for joining me through this analysis of where the playtest is going, and until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.